Launch coasters have become extremely common inside of the theme park scene for quite some time now. It feels like every other month there's an announcement for a new epic multi-story coaster with about 7 launches. Here's your next £1 million idea, Merlin. Add a launch to Spinball Wizard and get the Sonic IP back. Gotta go far. For someone like me who's not too big on the launch model of coaster, it's quite intimidating to see that a lot of the new coasters are being plagued with launches instead of the classic lift hill. That's not to say that launches are bad by definition, because that's not the case at all. But then when people start to list their top 10, you might realise that half of them do involve a launch of some capacity. No, not you 13, you're too extreme. Velocicoaster, The Ride to Happiness, Taron, Batman Gotham City Escape and Voltron are all examples of popular coasters that all share similarities in terms of them being high thrill speeding around the track with different twists, turns and elements. Speaking of world class, Furious Backer. But it got me thinking on why is it so appealing to both coaster enthusiasts and the parks themselves. I think there are quite a few reasons as to why they're so popular. A launch coaster is a type that propels the train to a high speed in a short amount of time. A speed that a launch can get to is dependent on the type of launch that it uses. The most powerful launches being the hydraulic cable launch and S&S's compressed air, which is about as powerful as my ass running to the toy store when I see there's a half price sale. On a traditional roller coaster, the train is given potential energy by the lift hill, which is later converted to kinetic energy as the train gets faster because of gravity. A launch is more efficient and faster than gravity as it's forcing the train in a specific direction, which makes the roller coaster feel more intense. For example, at Thorpe Park, Hyperia, the UK's tallest and fastest roller coaster. Even though Hyperia is 1 mile per hour faster, in terms of acceleration, Stealth feels a lot faster. That's because it is. Hyperia is more gradual in intensity as you slowly make your way over the top of the lift hill, whereas Stealth is basically instant. This is especially true because Stealth has a hydraulic launch, which is powered by a cable attached to a winch connected to the front of the car. When pressure is released, the winch spins really fast and makes the car go. And did you know that hydraulics are actually a fluid? So somewhere in this world, you can get a cursed smoothie. Many parks may choose to install a launch coaster over one with a lift hill because of its compact footprint. Without the need for a huge lift hill, they can fit into smaller spaces, which is a great fit for a smaller amount of room and parks that are more focused on theming. A large lift hill can be difficult to theme into a land as they usually look pretty bare. Hypercoasters, while impressive, can look a bit ugly. The more ridiculous you get with height, the harder it is to theme. But I say that's an excuse. Let's build a giant onion around the first drop of Orion. Obviously there are cases where they do manage to make it look less out of place, like Expedition Everest, but most of the time lift hills are left as they are. Theme parks can incorporate launches midway into the ride, have a show scene, or use multiple launches to achieve weird elements that would be otherwise impossible. From a creative perspective, launches are amazing for new ideas. Rides like Mandrill Mayhem, which are just goofy and fun, are made possible because of launches. Some parks just don't have 3 football fields to put another flip-flopping lift hill. With Mandrill Mayhem, there isn't enough room for a lift hill that would be able to gain enough momentum to do the course forwards, let alone backwards. Now, the next step to maximize airtime on a launch coaster is to remove the wheel. Advancements in launch systems like linear synchronous motors, typically known as LSMs, have been made smoother than ever and are becoming very reliable in comparison to the hydraulic counterpart that has seen a big downfall in recent years, not to mention the fact that they are energy efficient, which increases their appeal. Parks on flatland benefit from a launch system because it saves the construction costs of having to create their own terrain to put the lift hill on. The price to make a lift hill can also cost a lot of money, especially for smaller parks. It can limit the height and thrill level that they're able to achieve, when instead they could spend the money on a launch and then invest the rest of the budget to build a creative layout, rather than having to cut it short. It's also a very diverse asset to have. There are so many uses for launches, whether that's the classic multi-launch coasters like Pantheon and Velocicoaster, which keep up the pacing throughout using rolling launches. They're also used on shuttle coasters, or incomplete ones, Mandrill Mayhem, or rides like Tigress that make you wonder what people were smoking when they came up with it. Don't get me started on that shamrock coaster concept. No leprechaun or amount of gold could get me on that. Accelerator coasters were also very high in demand when launches were starting to become popular. These focus on speed and height instead of the layout itself. I say layout, but in reality I mean a top hat and a trimmed airtime hill.
Looking at you, Stealth.
Hydraulic launches have become very difficult to maintain in recent years, making it extremely difficult to keep these coasters surviving, as we saw with the sad closure of King Dakar and Dododonpa. It just begs the question of how much longer the other hydraulic coasters have before they're either converted to a different type of launch or scrapped altogether. Or here's an idea, what if they added a 420-foot spike? That sounds pretty original, right? The launch being versatile is what makes it so interesting in developments, as there isn't really a limit to what they can do, which keeps it fresh. This is especially true for indoor coasters, and Intamin's most recent addition to their portfolio, the multi-dimensional coaster. Ooh. These are really technologically advanced coasters that can also spin, but move forwards or backwards inside of a themed environment. This gives limitless opportunities for storytelling, and it makes me really excited for the new addition that's going to Chessington. Does your favourite theme park have an Animal Crossing collab in the make?
I didn't think so.
However, it begs the question, are there too many? I think that there's definitely been a lot in the last couple of years. Intamin have just been slapping these really impressive multi-launch coasters all over the world as if it's nothing for them. But for me, I still really enjoy a classic lift hill. That's not to say Intamin are the only ones doing launch coasters. Rapterra is the up-and-coming B&M launch coaster, and even Mack Rides have a great selection of launch coasters, like Voltron, which many people consider as their favourite coaster of all time. One day I'll do Voltron. It does look a bit scary. I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I just feel like there's a lot more anticipation on a lift hill. They're also more friendly for people who aren't in it for as much of an intense experience. Launches are built for airtime and wacky turns, rather than a graceful experience or something heavy in positive G's like an invert could deliver. But saying that, Vekoma inverts have started to add airtime, so maybe everything I know is a lie and I should just quit now before they build an inverted dive lift and launch shuttle coaster. Maybe I'm not built to enjoy the insane gut-punching 0 to 80 miles in 1.8 seconds. And you know what? I'm content with that. I think there will always be a place for lift hills, so don't get too worried if you're like me and don't enjoy a launch as much, especially when coaster manufacturers like RMC are bringing them back into fashion. For some reason, I've always found that their lift hills look far more impressive. It's definitely because of the huge steel and wood mixture that they use, but they're a good example of a classic coaster that has unusual elements. A large amount of enthusiasts really enjoy the intensity of a good launch, making these coasters a large draw for the hardcore thrill seekers. It can make a park that's not so relevant become a destination for people to visit. A multi-launch coaster is usually considered to be a park standout coaster. Lots of people go to Plopsaland just to experience the ride to happiness, the same way people used to visit Six Flags Great Adventure to ride the tallest coaster in the world. We will now share a 5-second silence for the king. Okay, I'm bored, let's move on. However, there are a small minority of people that genuinely think a launch saves everything. And I'm here to say that you're an absolute plank, and here's why. If something's bad, whether that's because the layout doesn't serve its purpose, or it's just profiled badly, adding a launch doesn't fix those pre-existing issues. I see a lot of people online being upset over slower coasters, or mad that their home park doesn't have the latest and greatest technology on their coasters. But I'm here to let you know that it's not all rainbows and sunshine, because unfortunately LEGO prices are at an all-time high, and yet I still have to pay bills, which is unbelievable. As we've seen firsthand, complex mechanisms require more inspections for more reliability and safety. A lot of launch components wear over time due to stress, which is a lot harder on the engineering side of things in comparison to a regular lift hill. This sometimes means that the launch systems can run into their own problems and have extended periods of downtime. They can also just decide to valley sometimes, but as Hyperia proved, you don't need a launch to valley. 1-0 to launch. While magnetic launchers like LSMs and LIMS might be less expensive than a lift hill and a hydraulic system, they require a lot more electricity, which could cost more over time. Power outages can halt their operations, and sometimes they just might fail to do high energy launches. A lot of the time, if one launch fails, then the whole ride can't operate. A lot of pneumatic systems are made to stop if the seals, valves, or hoses develop leaks. They also aren't known to be the most quiet things ever. Just listen to Taran's launch. It sounds like my nan's lawnmower. Parks that deal with noise complaints might not be allowed to have launch coasters because of this. There's also the question of comfort. Rapid acceleration can overwhelm a lot of people and shock those who aren't quite prepared for what they're going into. There's me thinking I was ready to go on stealth after Rita, but Lord was I wrong. High-speed launches can also cause gross vibrations, which can affect comfort, and sometimes they don't age the best. In the UK, both stealth and Rita can be a bit jarring the further back that you go. And like I said, they're also just really intimidating. Launch coasters definitely aren't for everyone. on. And I know some people that are great with flat rides and any coaster with a lift hill, but as soon as hydraulics are involved, they hate it, which is totally valid as it is super intense. I'd also say that I don't really like hydraulic launches, as it genuinely just makes me feel like I can never prepare for it, and a lot of the time launch coasters are definitely made for the hardcore thrill seekers. And honestly, more power to you. I wish I could be like that, but I think I'll just be sticking to my lift hills. While launch coasters provide unforgettable thrills and advantages, they definitely don't come without their own set of problems. Parks have to carefully figure out which ride type benefits them the best to ensure that the investment is worth it. And with such an ongoing advancement in roller coaster technology, we can expect to see launches used in lots of future record-breaking coasters, as they shape the future of theme parks for years to come. If it were up to me and my opinion, I'd say you're all crazy, but that's just me. If you really want thrills, try walking home in the dark while the Wicker Man theme tune is playing. Now that is heart-pounding. I'm curious to know whether you guys are like me and can't cope with a launch, or whether you really enjoy them and they're your favourite ride type. If you enjoyed this video or I made you laugh, consider checking out some of my other videos, or even subscribe, as there'll be more on the way soon. I hope you guys are all doing well. Take care, nerds. Oh, this must be the letter from Chessington that they were talking about. Dear Coleslaw, we saw your video on how much you love launches and we decided to add one to the Jungle Bus. Hope this is okay. Chessington. No! Wait, Coleslaw? Is anyone missing a right hand?